you've written a few books on cryptids, including The Humber Monster and The Beast of Barmston Drain. And I know you've got some stories of big cats in the area as well. Can you tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, I mean, when I got into the paranormal, to me, the paranormal was more than ghosts. It was cryptozoology and ufology and things like that. So I'd always wanted to research these stories. And I remember as a kid, my dad telling me stories about big cats on the loose and things like that. And so I spent a lot of time in the archives just going over the old newspapers. And I mean, the thing with the Humber Monster, I discovered between 1927 and 1937, hundreds of people had eyewitness reports right along the Humber, right along the North Sea, all the way up to Whitby. Right. These people were reporting a creature in the sea that was unknown. Several trawlermen from Hull had seen it. And these are guys that are at sea every day. You know, they know the stuff. And no one could explain what it was. And I remember writing this historical overview of these cases. And the media got hold of it. And they twisted it so much that it became a modern story. So that people were sort of saying to me, are you still out there looking for it? Well, no, this happened like 70, 80, 90 years ago, you know. And it was a really interesting story. And I remember people would write to me and say, I remember as a kid, my dad talking about it. And I remember seeing journals where it was they'd drawn a picture of a sea monster in the journal, say that's what they'd seen. And so that was wonderful. That was a really good story. The stuff with the big cats during the 90s, there were lots of sightings around the area. So if you look at where Hull is on the map, there were sightings out towards Willoughby, Anlaby, Brough, all the way around past Cottingham, right across near Beverley, and then around the other side as well, so near Sproatley and Heddon. And lots of people were seeing stuff. And I wanted to basically gather all these reports together and put them in there and say, look, this is what people are seeing. We don't know what they are. These are suggestions that people have put forward. And I went out a couple of times with my camera, my binoculars, and stood around soaking wet, freezing cold in muddy fields in the middle of nowhere, trying to catch stuff on camera. And I worked with a group of people that we work really well as a group. So when you're out there, you have a laugh, you know, you're with your friends and you're making these wonderful memories. And I think a big part of looking for cryptids and looking for UFOs and looking for ghosts is being with that group of people. Yeah. Where you're sharing this experience together and you're learning together and you know, so that was interesting. The Beast of Barmston Drain was a little stranger. That was a few years ago. A friend of mine had experienced what he called a black-eyed ghost kid on Skulkcoates Lane, and he said to me, "Do you know anyone that's had any experiences on Skulkcoates Lane?"
But did he describe a black-eyed ghost kid? What?
He just said it was a little boy who came up. It was parked up near, I don't know if you know the cemeteries on Skulkcoates Lane.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
The one on the northern side of Skulkcoates Lane with the big metal gates, he was parked up near there. He was an alarm fitter, so he'd just been to work. He was sat having a takeaway. It was just between jobs and then he was going to go home. And he was sat chatting to his wife and the electric's cut out in his vehicle. He looks across and there's a little kid stood there. And the kid's, he said his eyes were black. And he asked to get in the vehicle, and he was so scared. He said no, and he kept saying to this kid, "Just go away, just leave me alone." And in the end, the kid vanished, and as he vanished, all the electrics came back on. And he drove straight home to his wife, absolutely terrified. He was convinced it was a ghost. And like I said, how do you know it wasn't just a kid? You know, he kept saying, "But his eyes look black." But I mean, if you've ever been down there on a night, it's quite a dark thoroughfare. So I was trying to rationalise it, but I said to him, "Look, what I'll do is I'll ask out if anyone's had any paranormal experiences on Skulkcoates Lane." So I put a post on social media, has anyone had any paranormal experiences on Skulkcoates Lane? It wasn't a leading question. I didn't ask about ghosts or black-eyed kids or anything like that. Within a space of 7 hours, a number of individuals, all independent of each other, had contacted me privately via Messenger and said, "We have seen something on Barmston Drain." And it varied from a big dog like a wolf. One guy said it was quite a large thing, eating a German Shepherd. Another lad said it had followed him on his bike. I had a call from a guy who works for the Dangerous Dogs Division, Hull City Council. He was called out to a wolf. All the way down to a lady that said she saw it shapeshift.
Wow.
And someone said they'd seen it jump across the drain. So I remember
I'll just point out Barmston Drain, by the way, if anyone's listening. it's not just like a little drain on the edge of a road. It's quite a wide stream, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about 20 feet, 30 feet across.
When it rains, it gets quite a strong current on it.
And there's footpaths on. Well, there's a lot of it's footpaths on both sides, big grass embankments, that sort of thing, isn't it?
But yeah, so I remember at the time I just started work for the old Daily Mail, so I said I'm going to go down there and have a look for this thing. And they contacted me and said, "Don't go by yourself, and make sure you let us know how you get on." And if nothing happened, we actually ended up in Burger King on Stone Ferry, which is scary enough in itself. And I remember the next morning they were really panicked because they were sort of like, "We've not heard from you. Is everything all right?" And I said, "Yeah, nothing really happened. It was pretty quiet." And I remember I posted the article and it just went viral. Overnight, it was in the nationals, it was in the internationals, and everyone was kind of taking the mick a little bit out of Hull. Yeah. According to the nationals, we were going around on the night with torches and pitchforks and trying to beat this thing into. It was like a Hammer horror. So I reached out to all these newspaper reporters and said, "Come to Hull, visit Hull. We'll spend the night on the drain." So reporters came from the newspapers. Charles Christiansen came along. He is a folklorist who writes books on folklore. He brought with him an animal tracker. She was an expert in animals and stuff. And we walked down the drain. It was the middle of the night, absolutely pouring with rain. And on the other side of the drain, we had this absolute commotion in the trees and the undergrowth. Now, as you mentioned, the embankment on the drain is quite steep.
Yeah.
There's no way anything could have got onto that embankment without us seeing it. And I put my torch across, and these two big green eyes were looking across at us.
Oh my God.
And I said to these guys, like, "Come and have a look, see what this is." And the animal tracker's there, and she's like, "I have no idea," because the eyes were quite far apart on the other side of the embankment. And with that, another set of green eyes appeared.
Oh, we all saw it.
Yeah, we all saw it. You've got two unknown animals looking across at you at the other side of the embankment. So I turned around to the assembled world's media, all these big strapping lads with cameras, and they'd all run off. And I caught up with them and said, "What the hell's, potentially you've got evidence here. What are you running away for?" And their answer was, one of the ladies said it could jump across the drain. So they'd started to believe the story. And the next day they published it. We saw these green eyes in Hull. We don't know what they were. Wow. And then it went crazy. Alice Cooper got in touch at one point.
Alice Cooper, the rock star?
Yeah. He put a post on his Facebook page saying he wanted to come to visit the werewolf in Hull and stuff like that.
Get him down.
We had Vice TV came, Travel Channel came. We had lots of people come, and pretty much every night I would take film crews out. I know people were saying, "How do you do a werewolf film?" I mean, there's no guidance. So it was basically a lot just students stood around with cameras filming, trying to catch evidence, and weird things would happen. And now a lot of it was coincidental. But when you put it all together, so I remember one night we were out there and there was one group of about 30 students and we all got separated on the drain. And at that point, everybody's phone signal went off. So we couldn't communicate with each other. And it got quite scary at one point because we were like, where is everyone? Unfortunately, people had just got lost. On another occasion, we found a grave that looked like it had been ripped open by claws. And we couldn't explain that. We found lots of piles of excrement that were big piles. We couldn't explain them. One evening we were down, if you know Skulkcoates Lane, you'll know the tanning yard, which absolutely stinks. Yeah. We were down in the cemetery, we could smell the tanning yard, and in the distance we could hear dogs howling. And one of the producers of the TV show said, "We're going to call it a night now because of health and safety," and we're quite concerned. And I was like, "It's the tanning yard. It always smells like this on Skulkcoates."
Yeah,
and they were convinced it was something else. So there was lots of weird things that happened, that big coincidences. But when people came and explored and stuff like that, they were quite convinced that there was something there.